Welcome back to the latest episode of the Key and Mang audio experience. I'm your host, Mang, as always, and my fellow co-host, Key. Key, what's goody?
What's up, Mang? How are you?
I'm living great. Sun is shining right now. How are you?
Good. It's nice outside over here for
What's
once.
nice out? What's nice outside?
Well, nice
40?
for the winter.
40?
Probably like 40 something. Listen, it's been like 20, so it's fine.
Look, on the come up. I'm out here talking like I wasn't used to 10 degrees in February, so I don't know why I'm out here coming after you like that.
I don't know why either. It's all good though.
It's all good. Maybe it's because of the guests we have on today. We have Dr. Siobhan France, a doctor of physical therapy turned online business coach who helps DPTs and fitness professionals grow their online business with simple strategies and embodiment work. Siobhan, thank you for joining the show. How are you?
I am so good. I'm so honored to be here. Thank
Uh,
you.
so thank you. Thank you for joining us on your Sunday. We like to start our shows off with a this or that or would you rather question. So our question for you that we're going to start with you with is would you rather focus on building a strong email list or growing your social media followers?
Email list.
Why?
Because the money is in the list. You can lose social media in the next couple minutes. You can get locked out of your accounts. And honestly, when you collect the emails, you can make money whenever you want. It's like cash on demand.
Go ahead,
I
Keith.
agree. No, I agree. I had asked this question on Twitter yesterday, and people were like, well, you need a social media following to grow your email list. And I was like, to a certain extent. But if I had to choose one, I would definitely go with the email list just because you can be more personable as opposed to having random people follow you and they may not really interact with your stuff.
Yep.
I think if you're on the email list, you have more buy-in.
Yep. For
Agreed.
sure.
Agreed. I don't really have anything else to add. I'm gonna go 3 for 3 on the email list.
Well,
But
that's the first tip. If y'all don't have an email list, start building one.
there we go.
You heard her already.
And we'll probably dive into more of like things that you found have worked for you, but we're going to start it out with just, can you tell us a little bit about what got you into PT and just your journey from transitioning into the online space?
Yeah, totally. So my mom had a stroke when she was 29 and I was 5. And I grew up wondering, how does a young, healthy 29-year-old have a stroke? And by the time I got to high school, it's like, you got to figure out what you're going to go to college for. And I asked my mom, I said, what did Tammy do? Tammy was my mom's physical therapist. And I remember going to physical therapy. My dad would pick me up after school and I would get taken to physical therapy. And I was like, this is fun. And Tammy always included me in all the sessions. I got to exercise and I was a hype 5-year-old. So I thought that was fun. So when high school came, it was like, well, I want to be like Tammy. Tammy was the PT. So I just went head first and I applied to college as a pre-physical therapy major, knowing that I wanted to go to PT school after. So I did. And it took me a year to recognize how burnt out I was. And then after the 2-year mark, I actually went to an internet marketing for newbies event in 2014. And I felt like I was exposed to the world. I had grew up trusting the healthcare system. I wanted my own practice. I was like PT for life. I was die hard because I saw the changes that my mom had. And I was like, I want to be that kind of person for someone else. In 2014, I learned how I could leverage my degree. I learned that I could sell other things besides physical therapy or things that are adjacent to what we do. I hired my first coach. And by 2015, I had launched my first product. I launched a product on Amazon. I authored a book and I was doing a lot of in-person teaching and classes. And I was like, this money is nice. It was good. But something this entire time was just feeling off. And I was just doing anything the coaches told me I would implement really fast. But I felt like I had a lot of exposure on the what to do, but not any exposure on building up my self-development. And everyone preaches mindset, mindset. So I'm out here reading books, listening to YouTube videos, doing all the things. But something still felt off. I ended up having a pivot and I joined a network marketing company. And I kept saying, I want to help people with their mind-body connection. I just wanted to go a little bit deeper. So this network marketing company is all about cellular activation. And it brought me back to the history of my mom. And I was like, well, maybe this is the reason why she had a stroke. And so what I found myself doing a lot of in that network marketing company is coaching my team. I had already gained some social media savviness. I built a really beautiful team, and I was like, I really love coaching. And so in 2021, December 2021, I was like, I'm gonna go all in on this coaching thing. And then in August of 2023, I actually walked away from the clinic.
So how would you say that you took your skills from, I guess, being in PT school and like wanting to be in healthcare and translating that to helping people online?
So I was never the kind of physical therapist that treated just the knee. It was the knee, the hip, the ankle. I'd even look at the neck. I always took a holistic approach. I've always been into the personal development mindset space. And so how I treated my patients, I'm like, well, how do you sleep? You drink enough water? How do you eat? I was always asking deeper questions than how's your knee pain? And so when it comes to business, I think we get stuck in the strategy. Like, how do I do this? Give me a framework. Give me this content pillar. Give me all that. And we have all that, but people still aren't making any money. And so I took the same approach and recognized that we are the human behind the business, especially when you're building a personal brand. Like, I'm not selling candles where I'm the face of the brand. Nothing against candles, but like I could sell candles and not be the face of the brand, right? But when you're building a coaching business and it's personal, there's parts of yourself that you really have to level up. And so I always looked at physical therapy on your business as well. So it's always been a holistic approach for me.
You talked about having to level up yourself in business or level up as a person in business. What were some of the things that you had to level up to get to where you're at right now?
I had to have a lot more intention behind what I'm doing. I think people reach business and they're like, I'm so smart, I'm so confident, I'm really good at what I do. But in the mindset, the personal development, the embodiment, you got to look at, are you actually confident? Like you're about to put your work out there into the world. You're about to go help people on a much grander scale. And so you're exposing yourself to be attacked, essentially. People who can not agree with you, people who could tell you that you're wrong, people can tell you all these things. So you got to build up essentially calluses, if you will. Like you have to have courage. You have to have a level of intention and integrity within yourself that you know that you believe in your truth and the things that you bring to the table. And in the physical therapy world, like it don't matter if you're good at your job. It don't matter if you want to half-ass it. It don't matter if you sleepy that day. It don't matter if you decide not to do manual because you feel tired. Like none of those things matter. You don't have to be a good decision maker. You don't have to have confidence, courage. You don't have to have any of those things. But when you come into the entrepreneurial world, you have to have those things. If you're going to not just make money, I think making money is like so easy. Like you can make money. I'm talking about sustaining the kind of money that you make, where you get paid consistently over and over and over again, because you could repeat what you've done because you've become the person who can repeat it. And so what I've really found is that we approach business in such a cerebral manner, where it's just these frameworks and the this and the that, but it's like, we gotta be the person. So my level up came with massive amounts of self-trust within myself. I have to trust the products I'm putting out there. I have to trust the words that I'm saying. I have to trust what I'm doing. I can't trust a system to pay me. I have to trust my own decisions, my own actions, my intuition. And that, as a byproduct, is how the money comes.
Is that something you've always had, that trust in yourself, or is that something you had to develop over the years?
Nah, I had to develop that. I thought I had trust in myself. And let me just say this, we all have a level of trust. We are clinicians, whether it's PT, OT, whatever, we all have a level of trust. It just requires something much deeper when you are an entrepreneur, because you are being challenged to a different greater of depth than you ever have before. This is a whole game of faith. Like this is a game of faith and consistency and endurance. So we believe we're confident. We are confident. We believe we have faith. We do have faith. We believe these things, but it's to what level do we have it? What level of business do you want to build? Because you can make $500 a month with like a little bit of trust. But you want to start putting yourself out there more and more and more and hit thousands, 10K months, 20K months, and you want to do that and beyond, it takes something deeper. That's what I had to build. I started making more money than I had trust in myself to maintain it. And that's really what happened. I was earning at a faster rate that my personal development was not keeping up with. I was trusting the money coming in. I wasn't trusting myself to continue making the money. So it consistently felt like a hustle. I had to keep feeling like I was doing something to get that kind of money. And I don't want to make money like that. Like that's just tiring. Like I want to just know that I trust in the work that I'm putting out, and as a byproduct that money comes. That shift is a game changer. And unfortunately or fortunately, it could be a little bit slower. And so my story is I'm not some overnight whatever success. Like I don't even consider that any kind of success other than like this is just my journey. I've always wanted to leave my 9 to 5. And so the deeper layers of trust that I've had to cultivate, that's new. I did not have that.
Did you stumble on that, like, I guess, realization on your own, or did you have kind of a coach tell you that, like, hey, your income is high, but like your self-trust isn't in line with it? Because I feel like
that's a really good question.
Right now, there's not a lot of coaches that are saying that. It's all strategy, strategy, strategy. So did you have a coach that was like on a different path that was preaching something else?
I did not have that. I did not have that. That is something that is self-discovered. So when I was a part of my network marketing company, and I still am, just not super active, I was at an event 2017 or 18. I think it was 18 maybe. And my friend said to me, we're at a restaurant and a whole group of us sitting around, and I'm just my happy-go-lucky self. And somebody came and sat next to me. And I didn't notice anything, but what my friend said to me was, are you okay? And I was like, I'm good. Why? She's like, your whole energy just shifted. And I was like, okay. And when I thought about it, I was like, I guess I'm in a different mood. And she said, you're an empath. And I was like, I don't know this. So like I'm pulling out Google, trying to Google empath. And something in me in that moment clicked. And I was like, wow, I am an empath. And I don't necessarily like labels, but it is nice to sometimes identify like you're not crazy. I've grown up as a person that always had a lot of emotions, like big emotions. I attached a lot of meaning to everything. I made it mean something about myself. So whether it was really good emotions or really bad emotions like fear and scarcity and anxiety, I always felt those things to such great depth. And so as I went on my journey of discovering what is an empath, really understanding the level of emotion, I was like, this all makes sense. This makes sense why I felt like I couldn't keep up with myself in business. This makes sense why I felt like I couldn't push, where I felt like I was burning myself out. And so as you start understanding personal development, getting into the spiritual world and kind of going beyond the mind and really stepping into the body where we actually hold our emotions, I was like, man, I don't really trust myself. I was like, I don't really trust the words that I'm saying. Like, I believe them, but the words that were coming out, I felt like the world was going to attack me for saying the things I wanted to say. Like, I stand on the ground that energetics in business matters, that this work matters. And as I started to speak more, I developed more trust within myself. And that was just the words I'm saying. Trust to make money, trust to know that I'm going to show up tomorrow and build my business after I'm done with work. Like, trust that this can really happen. And so once I noticed that, it started to make sense. I was like, this is why people know what to do, but aren't doing it. This is why people know what to do, but feel so much fear. This is why people know what to do, but are still worried about the next person that might attack them. They don't trust themselves enough to go first. They don't trust themselves enough to keep shining even when they're being attacked. Like if you're not willing to be attacked, then like business is going to be a real hard journey. And I think there's some people, and I call us very heart-centered, heart-led entrepreneurs, not saying other people don't lead with heart, but there's some people in this world that just, we feel deep, like everything just means something. Like we're just emotionally driven. And I didn't have anywhere to put that. None of that made sense. And so I had to teach myself this level of trust when it comes to making money, because I'd made money mean something. And I just did a live the other day where I was like, I thought making more money would make me trust myself. But it's through trusting myself that I've made more money. And I really feel like if people can make that switch, they'll make more money peacefully and with ease and sustain it. So no, I did not have anybody tell me that. And that is actually the foundation for how I help people build a business, is you got to trust yourself, because we got all the strategies in the world. There's a number of one coaches doing that. And I'll teach strategy, but I don't lead with that because there's so much underneath that.
So when it comes to finding that trust in yourself, if there's people who are similar to you and like personality wise and like lead with a lot of emotions and have a lot of emotions that they're trying to figure out how to express and navigate, can you take us through 1 to 2 things that you felt like helped you be able to channel the emotions and build that trust, and how you been able to develop it?
Yeah, I don't want to make it sound complex. I could really make it simple, but there's so much depth to this entire process. The first thing I actually did was I had to cut off the rest of the world. And what I mean by that is I actually had to stop listening to podcasts, YouTube videos. I had to stop reading because I recognized that my thoughts and their thoughts were getting confused. And I didn't know what was me and what was them. And so if I'm going to show up in the business space, I actually need to cut out the noise so I could hear myself. What do I think? What do I believe? Like, that mattered more. And what I notice is that there's so much regurgitation of information out here. And I don't think we do that on purpose. I think it's because we don't take enough time to cultivate our voice and how we say things, that we end up using other people's words for us. And that's why people sometimes feel like an imposter. They feel like there's a level of disconnect because they might be saying the words, but they don't believe the words that they're saying to a certain level of depth. And so I had to cut out the noise and just hear myself. And I started writing a lot. Writing is a key for me anyways, to getting my ideas clear, and also the key to being a better speaker. And so I started writing a lot. So I knew what was my own thoughts, my own ideas. And if I heard something that resonated with me that someone else said, I was like, how do I feel about it? So when people talk about raising your prices, for example, someone's like, you got to raise your prices, you got to charge your worth. I noticed there's something in me that doesn't quite agree, because I don't think it's just as easy as raising your prices. You might have a limiting belief around that. So we have to instill a certain level of confidence and courage within your words to raise your prices, a belief system, if you will, in the products that you're putting out there. So I started writing that down. When I heard something someone else said, I was like, what do I think? What do I believe about that? And I wrote that down. And I was like, this is me. This is what I believe. So that's one. The second thing that I do is I read a lot. And this is after I got out of my phase. I read a lot about the thing I want to know. And then I go and I take action on that thing. Like if there's something I need to get done, I read about it. I learn what I need to learn about it. And then I go take the action. One of my favorite things in the way that I teach anyways is, what is the underlying belief that you have that's actually holding you back? And let's work on that belief. And I'll give you some things to do to work on that belief. And I'll actually bring what you believe to the forefront. And then we got to go pair that with an action in your business to solidify that change. And so that's what I did. I uncovered the belief. I read the book I needed to do. I tweaked it out in my own mind, and I went to go take the action. Whether that action was, even if it was just a piece of content, we get our mind all squirrely about putting content out there. Is it clear? Does it say the right thing? Does it talk to who I want to talk to? I was like, if I can get clear within myself, I don't have to worry about all that. I don't have to worry about if someone's going to like it. I don't have to worry about all these external factors. Am I going to, how many likes I'm going to get? I was like, if I'm worried about the external validation of it, then there's something in me that is not connected. So I was taking action on doing these things no matter what, once I felt like I'd really uncovered what I wanted. So I cut out all the noise. I got clear on myself. After I got clear on myself, I introduced new books into my mind. And then I always paired that with an action. And I'll just add this as a huge staple. Meditation is really big for me. Meditation is really big because I use that to teach my body not to react. I always say feelings are not facts. Like, we should honor what we feel, but feelings are not facts. We have to actually be able to identify, like, I'm not really feeling scared. I'm not really feeling afraid. I'm anticipating something bad that I think might happen. So I can't operate like that. So when I actually meditate, I'm able to tune into my own guidance, my own intuition, and I'm not feeling pulled by some of these, what I call like lower energy vibrations, the anxiety, the scarcity, the fears. So those are my 3 hacks with some context, of course.
How did you manage to do those, I guess we would call it embodiment or like mindset strategies while still being in the clinic with people who don't think like that?
I was thinking about something the other day, and I wanted to post something on my Instagram, and I was like, man, I can't post that because what if people think this? This was like a couple weeks ago. And what I noticed is, like, I'm intense as fuck. Like, I'm just an intense person. Like, I'm low-key obsessed. And I'm obsessed with not being mediocre. And the thing that I wanted to post, I ended up posting it anyways. But the thing that I wanted to post, I was like, man, people might think I'm obsessed. But it's because I am. And that's just my truth. And so I think when it comes to being in the clinic, like, I'm just fucking obsessed. Like, I've been in the game of online marketing since 2015 when I first started. So this game is about having endurance. I already had endurance. And when I noticed I was doing these new embodiment practices as of like 2018, like really doing them, I was like, I'm onto something. Like, I knew it. I knew what I was onto, and I knew how I could help people. And I knew that this was a shift that they needed to make. And so while I'm working in the clinic, I care so much more about people getting to where they want to go faster than I did. And I see myself as the vessel for people being able to do that, because there's a lot of people teaching people how to make money. I want to teach people how to sustain the money that they have and continue to stabilize it. Because people making quick gains, I hit a 10K month in like 14 days. Okay, like, are you doing that again next month? Because that takes a whole toll on your system when you make quick money like that and you can't sustain it. And the other thing too is, sometimes I think when we have this quick success, we don't actually learn some of the lessons we need to learn. And because my success has been like drawn out, like low-key slow, like just all these crevices, twists and turns, I'm like, there's no way I can keep this knowledge in my brain. And so while I'm at work, I think about that. I think about the people I meant to serve. I think about the shit I've been through. And if people really only knew, like, goodness gracious, like, I think about that and I'm like, I wish somebody would have told me this sooner. Like, I would have legit cut my own learning curve. But there's a part of the reason why we got to go first. So I think people need to have some more intensity. I think people need to have some more urgency about the things that they want. I think people need to, like, make a decision within themselves that this is what they want and not let themselves off the hook. And I'm not saying it's always easy. Some days is low-key hard, like low-key really difficult to keep yourself going, especially when you want the result and it's quote unquote not happening at the speed you want. That means there's a part of your becoming process that you haven't yet hit. And that actually becomes the work. So I really kind of chunked this down on what things I needed to do on certain days. I didn't try to overwhelm myself or overtask myself. I didn't try to do everything after work in one day. I did always hit key components of doing my safety and my trust exercises, doing my meditation, and working on one part of my business for the day. But none of that can happen without somewhat of an obsession, somewhat of you making this a priority. You got to have some urgency. And urgency, let me be clear, it does not mean you need to be hustling, staying up late. Like, if you want to do that, cool. But it doesn't have to be that way. Urgency just means, like, you feel the fire. Like, you're meeting your business with a level of intention, a level of fire, a level of heart, a level of passion that this shit matters to you. And I think people want to leave their job so bad, they stop caring about why they want the business in the first place. Like, people are on missions. I don't work with anybody generic. My people are thought leaders. Like, they are changing the game in their respective spaces, and they all have heart. They all have intensity. If they're up late, it's not because they're anxious. It's because they're excited about what they're working on. So I think that's the shift.
Do you feel
Good
like,
answer.
oh, sorry, go ahead, Key. Go ahead, Key.
Nope, go. I was gonna make a comment. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I asked that question because I feel like I'm low key intense too, and I don't know. I've never been called obsessive, but I feel like people be like, "Oh, you probably shouldn't be working on that." Like, are you almost done? And I'm like, I'm never fucking done. Like, and I feel like it's hard to, at least for me, it's hard to relate to people in the clinic when they don't necessarily understand certain things.
They don't. And
Right.
I stopped trying. Like, I stopped trying. I don't need them to believe for me to keep going. And not that I'm saying you do, but anybody else like listening, we don't need anybody to believe for us to keep going. And the truth is people genuinely admire people that are more intense. Like, they wish they had that. And I'm like, I hope you catch a little bit of my spark. Like, if that's what I could do for you as being in the clinic, I hope you catch some of my spark.
When it comes to those days that are hard, you're putting in the work in, you're doing all the things for personal development, doing the things for your business. How do you go about, I don't want to say bouncing back from the hard days, but how do you ensure that you keep on going and going through the process and not straying off the path that you're supposed to be on?
I think you get to a point where you're too deep in to turn around. I think that's one. Like, you're just too deep in to turn around. I think another part of this is, if you didn't do this and you didn't keep going, like, what else you gonna do? Like, I'm just unwilling to sit with the emotion of, man, I feel like I'm made for something big. I feel like I'm made for something greater, and then not doing it. Like, that really baffles me. I can't sit with that and not take action. So on the days that feels hard, not every day is going to feel like that, but the days where it feels good, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm definitely rejuvenated. And on the days that it feels hard, I'm like, what else am I going to do right now? But I also think the actual concept, the switch, is that it's in the hard that entrepreneurs are built. It is in the valley. So I always think about that. I'm like, right now it's hard, but it's because I know I'm being built. And when you can wrap your mind around that, like, there's no stopping. Like, after the rain, there's always a rainbow. Like, there's always something. And I think that's faith. That's like you recognizing it's faith. Either the work you're doing is visible right now and you can see its fruits of its labor, or it's not. But when you don't see it, it's because you're being produced in order to produce the fruit. Like, you as the human are being produced before you see the external result. So I'm like, okay, if I see the external result, I know it's because of me, like the things I've done. So I allow those hard days to build me up. And I'm like, what can I learn? Like, what am I being taught? What is my level of courage? What is my level of confidence? Like, what am I really being taught here? And I kind of check these off as like, man, I'm really requiring to have more faith during this hardship right now. Like, I've been doing this is not working. And I also had to learn to detach from the outcome. I learned in the hardship, if I keep attaching to the outcome, it's going to be more hard. So I needed to actually decide that this hardship is just building me, and I was getting my calluses. So that's really how I see that. But I'll be honest, it wasn't always like that. There was a point where, like, everything for me was like, man, this is overwhelming. Man, this is anxious. But like, these are things you work through. And I really want people to know that the people we admire, there is so much off-camera work. It's like, wow, look at you on camera. Like, y'all got no idea. It is levels of practice. It is levels of sitting in your own shit, of feeling anxious, trying to get something done, trying to put a page together, trying to, talk to this client and maybe having a sales conversation in the DM. Like, it's so much stuff where we're working through our own belief systems. And so it really just boils down to how you view that hard, and allowing that hard to actually build you rather than take you over.
I think detaching from the outcome is hard to do. And I also feel like a lot of physical therapists or just people who went to school for a certain amount of time have a hard time detaching from, I guess, their letters or their degrees because they feel like they spent all this time trying to get it. So did you ever struggle with detaching from that and being like, hey, like I know I went to school to become a physical therapist. I have my doctorate in this, and then I'm totally like switching.
That actually held me back a lot in the beginning. Like that held me back a lot. So I was like, who am I? I'm a PT saying like I don't love treating patients in the clinic anymore. Like that's a hard thing. And I always had to go back and say, but it's not that I don't love the patients I work with. It's not like I always felt like I had to justify. But the truth is I started to view physical therapy as a stepping stone. Like, if I really thought about why I got into this career in the first place, I wanted to be a psychologist. But my mom was like, you need to be a physical therapist because you want to be in the healthcare field doing what we're doing because people are always getting injured. You're always going to have a job. There was so much security built into me from a young age, but I didn't quite recall some of these conversations. So when I was in high school, I was like, what did that Tammy woman do? Like, what was that? And that's when I was like, okay, like I'll go do that. I was almost persuaded into being a physical therapist. And it's funny because a lot of what I do now is work with people's belief systems on top of strategy. And what's interesting is that kind of goes back to wanting to be a psychologist. I'm not a trained psychologist or anything like that. However, we can understand basic human psychology without having this degree, right? It could just be a level of study. And so I'm essentially doing what I always wanted to do as a kid before I even learned what PT was. So it took me some time to detach from my degree because my worthiness was attached to my degree. Worthiness was attached to people calling me a doctor. My worthiness was attached to like feeling like I went through this whole initiation process to get these letters. Like I worked so hard, all this stuff. I was attached to that level of hard and that level of hard work. And I made those things mean something about me other than the just innate value and gifts that I bring to the table. And so that held me back because I felt like I had to declare, well, I don't want to be a PT no more. And I just hid under the cover of like, well, I love being a therapist, but and I just wasn't staying true to my word. And that watered down my message. Audience can't hear you or feel you when your message is watered down like that. So for me, it gradually happened over time because I kept showing up. I kept showing up. I kept speaking it. But when I got real with myself, I don't want a mediocre life. I was like, I have to say that. Like, it's just the truth. And I don't mean that no hit. We all get to decide what is mediocre. I just knew I grew up feeling like I was made for something big to have a much bigger impact. And that ain't happening in the clinic. And I got to find a way to figure this shit out. And so that was the level of drive. But it's through the consistency of still showing up that you learn to get your own worthiness from just the mere fact that you exist. We're all inherently worthy. Like we don't need we don't need nothing to know that we are worthy. And I had to come back to that. But that only happened as a result of the endurance to keep going and showing up.
I think that's real cool. It's a real cool journey to go through and look back on when you're talking about. I think the cool thing about being a PT is that it's so versatile. And even though you don't have a psychology degree, you learn how to read people, you learn body language, you learn
Totally.
you learn when people feel confident, when people are not feeling confident. I think it's so versatile. And, I think it's also interesting to hear, like, I didn't feel like you didn't feel like you were going to get to your top, your man, a great, extraordinary life or career or whatever the
Yep.
word is to get by just being in the clinic. So I think, PT is very versatile in that way, but I think it also opens up a lot of doors. And once you take a step back and look at, hey, like I can do this. I have all these skills. I know how to talk to people one-on-one. I know how to teach. I know how to educate. I know how to help you get from point A to point B. And that applies to so many things besides just PT. So I think that's really cool realization to come to. And then you mentioned like not getting to your like living a mediocre life in the PT clinic. What does extraordinary look like for you? Extraordinary life look like for you?
I don't even think I can define it, man. Honestly, like I can tell you what it's not. It's not being told what I need to do, when I need to do it, what cap on money I need. Like, it's not that. I ultimately see myself on stages, like big stages, teaching this level of work, and not just teaching the science of business, but the art of it. And I think we are actually the art, and we don't take enough time to craft ourselves. And so to have sustainable business, we need that art piece. And so I want to actually be on bigger stages talking about that. And so extraordinary to me is, it's funny because it's not working. Like, I love this work so much. And I talk to my clients on the weekends, and people are probably like, oh my God, you should have some cutoff time. Serving gives me energy, and I will never do it at the expense of my own self. Believe me, I fuel my own cup, but I do that because I outpour, but I'm also understanding of the audience I serve who are still working. I know what it was like when I was still working. I was working with coaches. I'm like, man, I'm working on my business right now, but like, I got a question and like, I have to wait. And so I'm like, well, I get to be that for my people. So extraordinary for me is not working. It's actually continuing to dive deeper into this work on different levels, doing more collaborations with people so we can bring this conversation to the forefront, because no one's talking about it. And it's like, this is unsexy. Like, this is unsexy work. Ain't nobody want to talk about this. It doesn't, quote unquote, sell. Right? Like, talking about this doesn't necessarily sell as easily. But when you've burned out enough and you've tried to do everything and it's not working, then you could be like, oh, I think what she's saying actually makes sense. But sometimes that's just the journey we have to be on, you know? And so extraordinary is taking this work to different levels, taking this work into new rooms, and honestly, allowing this kind of work to be in high schools and to also be in different colleges, just for the mere fact of, that's when you're already being groomed to trust the system you're about to go in. And so if we can intersect that with, well, do you even know your personality type? Do you even know how you operate? Because I used to want to have a private practice, but a private practice doesn't fit in with my core. I like to take a lot of breaks. Like, I'll do a call, I'll take a break. I'll do work for 2 hours, I'll take a break. I like to have leisure. And I never felt like having a clinic, a cash pay clinic, could do that. And I'm not interested in hiring a rack of people so I can go on vacation. Like, that was not for me anymore, but that is my personality type. So I think if we brought this work to high school students and we start introducing it and teaching people, I should say our kids, how to start building this trust so that they can make better decisions for their life. And so that is what extraordinary is to me, is getting on bigger stages, but also making sure I bring this work back to the people where that mindset development, that personality development is really being impressed upon.
I really love that. I feel like it's a hard question to ask, so I appreciate the thoughtfulness to answer the question. But I know me and Key always talk about, trying to talk to the next generation of people coming up after us. Like, if they want to go to PT, like, this is what you're gonna see. This is what you got to be mindful of. You're talking about the money. You're talking about how hard you're gonna have to work, et cetera, et cetera. But also what it can lead you towards, whether it's online, whether it's brick and mortar, whether it's, whatever maybe you leave the field and go into tech or whatever. But just being open and transparent and trying to get at the younger generation before they get into, like, yeah, like you said, trusting the system, and being
Yeah,
and getting exposed to one side of things and not seeing what the other side can bring you if you do the work. So I really love just trying to get into the younger people and get that message out there to more people.
for sure, for sure.
Was there ever a time that you wanted to open a physical location or like brick and mortar practice?
Yep. The moment that I graduated in 2012, and I worked in that clinic for 1 year, and I was like, I'm so burnt out, so tired. I literally quit, gave my notice a year to the date when I started. And I was like, well, I'm gonna pick up this contract job so I could just make some more money, and then I can figure out where I'm gonna have this location. Like I was in the thought process of this is what I want to do. Like after I work contract for a year or two, I'm gonna make a move into brick and mortar. Cash pay like wasn't really the thing. It was like opening up your own clinic was the thing. This is back in 2012. And so 2012, 2013. And so in 2014, when I went to that Internet Marketing for Newbies event, I was like, I don't need to have a brick and mortar. And I understood different business models. And I understood leverage and all of the things, exactly what you just said, Mang, all the things that physical therapists are great at and all the skills I could bring online. That was like the info age. Everyone was selling some kind of info product. It wasn't necessarily called coaching per se. There's a lot of courses and like info things going on. And I was like, I don't need that. And that was the first time I had a huge aha. Like, I'm so glad that I didn't rush into starting the clinic. But also there was something in me that was holding me back from going all in with having these conversations and figuring out how to actually get it done. Something was holding me back. Something didn't feel right. And when I was at that event, I was like, this is why it didn't feel right. Because I actually am not supposed to. Like that is not my mission. That is not my purpose. And so what I think is happening in the space is when you don't trust yourself, you're allowing people to tell you what you should do. You're allowing people to guide you, but it's like you're running your own race, but in their lane. And you're not learning how to carve out your own lane. And so the vision that you see is actually their vision. But that might not be you. But the thing is people don't know themselves well enough to be able to say, like, I don't want brick and mortar. It's like they think that is just the next step, or that's the easiest step, or that's just what should happen, or I can't let go of my degree, so I have to be in that route. But I think if we actually took a second and was like, what are we actually good at? What do we actually want to do? How much do we want to work or not work? Right? And I don't actually think any of us don't want to work. I think we just want to do things that matter to us. Like I literally could work for hours and not feel any kind of way. And I love my breaks, but like I could just work because this stuff fuels me. Like there's a deeper mission and purpose here. So I really feel like if we all just took the time to figure that out, we'd recognize the route we want to go and we got to do the work. But man, I was all about, I can't wait to have my own brick and mortar. I can't wait to have patients come to my clinic. Like that was my jam. And I would envision myself having my own business. And my dad grew up always telling me, I don't care what you do, but you got to work for yourself. So I was groomed in that way as well. So I was like, I could just use my degree to go and do that. But, you know, it's 2024. Here we are. My life looks so different.
You
You
talk
say
about,
you have to.
go ahead.
All right. You said that you still have to do the work, and I know you posted. This was probably, I don't know when it was, but I saw you post that like people say that cash pay is easier than online, but it's not easier, it's still work, but it's just different work.
Still work.
So
I do think it's
how's it
different.
different?
I do think it's different, actually. I really do, because, and I'm not here to say like one is harder. What I am saying, it is different. Imagine as a clinician, when our worthiness is tied into our degree, we now go into having a cash pay clinic or a brick and mortar or whatever. We're taking our worthiness now of that into business. So sometimes we don't necessarily have to dive into certain components. Yeah, we still have to trust ourselves. We got to make the money. We got to call in the people. We still have to market. We still have to do these things. But essentially, we are staying in that lane of skill set. But what I found is people who start coaching and build a personal brand, we're not necessarily coaching in the PT space of like, I'm teaching you exercise. They become health coaches. So what does that mean? We start layering on different components of ourselves. So we might teach some form of nutrition. We might teach some form, yes, exercise, but it's not just HEPs. And what I found is that we actually have to lead ourselves. We tend to end up coaching people that are kind of how we were in the past. And so there's a level of leadership. If I'm going to teach somebody about, I know a lot of clinicians who do like Pilates and yoga and things like that and end up becoming coaches. Well, if you haven't done yoga in a whole month, but you're telling people to do yoga and you're preaching about it, it feels really difficult sometimes for you to show up when you're not doing that work in the background. But as a PT, doesn't necessarily have to work that way if you got a cash pay practice, because the healing is about them and the patient. There's not necessarily parts of you that you might have to heal. There's probably not parts of you that you have to worry about, oh, I got to share my personal story online, or I got to share parts of me online, or I have to be vulnerable about me online. No, I basically get to still talk about physical therapy, treat my patient. Then it's kind of like I get to, I don't want to say put it outside of me, but essentially I get to put it outside of me. And I get to get wrapped up in my patient and their care, but I could be struggling in my own health. I could not be leading myself. I could not make good decisions. I could not do all these things personally in my personal life. But my cash pay practice, I get to show up for my people. And so I think it's just different kind of work, because you still got to market. You still got to market. You still got to put yourself out there. You still got to create your content. Like, you still got to do that and pull people into you. But I do believe the spaces are different. There's a different level of healing work that happens within the coaching world, depending on the kind of coach that you become.
Then do you notice anything with new, whether it's online space or physical space, of entrepreneurs, business owners trying to please everybody and not staying true to themselves? Or is it more of a case of, once they decide to go into their venture, they can, stay in their lane and be themselves and still produce a viable service or a product, valuable service for people? Or do you feel like people have a hard time with, trying to impress everybody and making sure that everybody's good?
People try to make sure everybody's good. I think that's just such a common thing just in the world, not just in healthcare, but especially in healthcare, but it happens everywhere. We're always trying to make sure somebody else is good. We're always trying to make sure that we're pleasing somebody and not ourselves. And that affects our marketing. That affects how we show up. And that affects the kind of people that we attract into our world as clients or as patients. And so, believe it or not, I've had people reach out who have brick and mortars, who have cash pay practices, and they're like, this really isn't what I want to do. And they don't know how to get out. They don't know what their options are. And they recognize the work they have to do if they decide they want to build an online business is different work than they've done, because you get into a rhythm of being the PT. When you're the PT, you're the PT. You don't have to be the coach. It's different. And so when people decide that they're no longer pleasing themselves, I've had a number of people actually recognize, like, man, I thought this was the way. I thought this was the only way. I didn't recognize what my options are. And that's why I love social media. It exposes us to what is available. But sometimes we're either paralyzed by everything that's available, or we admire someone and think that we got to do what they're doing. And that's how people kind of get in. And everyone's like, this is the best way. This is the best way. This is the best way. And I'm in the camp of like, the best way is the way you want to live your life. The best way is whatever is paid for you to live your mission. If that is what you want, then great, go do that. But if that's not what you want, then what is?
How does that hurt your messaging?
I could see this one of two ways. This is where I got to look at daggers coming at me. Like, you try to tell people, not to be a PT anymore, or you're trying to tell people that they shouldn't have a cash pay practice. I'm like, actually, no. If you listen to my messaging, you're going to recognize I tell people to find their lane. Like, find their lane. Don't get pulled. And that's the problem with online. Always y'all introduced this whole podcast with that. It's a this or that online, right? But the truth is, it ain't this or that. Like, business is nuanced. We are the human behind the business. So if we're not taking care of the human behind the business, at some point there's going to potentially be like an implosion, right? So my messaging is often misinterpreted. The other thing I will say is that's also making sure that I continue, one, to keep putting my messaging out there, but two, to get better at my communication, get better at my own delivery. But also recognizing that people just have their agendas and everyone's like trying to allow people to reimagine their physical therapy career. I'm like, that's cool and all, but some people just don't want to do that. Some people just recognize that PT wasn't for them. And there's a lot of people that pick this profession like out of all their options. All right, you can be this, 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 and this. All right, PT. Oh, I had an injury when I was in college. I went to PT. I liked it. Now I'm a PT. Oh, I saw my grandma go to physical therapy. I liked it. Now I'm a PT. My story. My mom had a stroke. I went to PT. Now I'm a PT. There was no thought. It was a pull initially. It jived with us. But when we pick careers, we're not even developed enough to fucking pick a career. But here we are picking a career that we're supposed to do for the rest of our lives. People just develop differently over time and recognize this just ain't it. And I want people to know it's okay if that's not it. Every skill can genuinely be brought online in some capacity, even if you've got an offline component. And that's really what I want people to know, is that you can do whatever the fuck you want. You just actually have to take the time to figure out what it is you want. Why are you laughing?
Uh, um, totally threw me for a loop there. Why are you laughing? That's mad funny. That's mad funny. One of my last couple questions is when I'm thinking about, finding content online, or if I were to stumble upon your stuff online and I get an idea for what Siobhan's about, what she brings to the table, what she's going to help me with, are there certain people or traits that you're looking for from people who come into your world that who want to work with you, or that you want to work with?
That's a really good question. One of the things that I've identified about the people I work with, they feel like physical therapy was their stepping stone to something greater. That's one. The second thing is that they grew up with a lot of emotions, whether it's fear, anxiety, overwhelm, like they just grew up feeling like, man, there's a lot happening inside my body and I don't know how to channel it. The other component of my person is they think about their respective industry that they're stepping into differently than other people. They don't say what other people say. They don't want to do what other people want to do. They're actually wanting to carve out their own lane. And for that reason, what they actually require is a level of depth. And that's really what I bring for my people. I bring depth because there is context to what we need to do online. There's context to being a human in business. There's ways we operate in our personal life that's actually affecting how we operate in business. And so sometimes there is a life coaching component of how I work with people. I'm like, this is how you act in your personal life. This is showing up in your business like this. And sometimes it's easier to clean up the life space and then allow the business to also flourish. And so for me, people who work with me want to be developed. And I would say that is the big thing I've taken away from my own journey is I had to develop myself. If I want to run a 7-figure plus company, I'm not going to do that by happenstance. I have to develop. And so where I'm at in the journey I've been on, I'm like, here are the nooks and crannies and the crevices. And what's interesting is there is a level of detail that I provide when I coach, and the people I work with actually want that detail. They want the detail because it doesn't make sense in their head yet. So the detail helps them make it make sense. So the people I work with are looking for that. They're looking for detail. They're looking for context. They're looking for depth. And they're looking for longevity. A lot of my clients stay with me. I've had clients for going on 2 years. I have a girl just crossed a year. Like the longevity, because I'm always growing. And so the moment I take something and I've put myself in different rooms, I come back and I'm like, wow, here's how I develop. Like, here's how I can pass this along. And I can allow them to see a bigger vision. So my people are not looking for the one next client or the one, like, sure, we do that. But they're like, well, what is the landscape of my entire business? Making sure we don't bottleneck themselves, right? Making sure that we build out, certain offer suites and we do certain things, but I give them a starting point and I allow them to see their vision for themselves. And that's what my people are looking for. Can you see why or how this could be difficult to translate into online marketing? Because what I just said was like a whole thesis, right? And so this is my job as the marketer, is to make sure that I'm distilling down my message in a way that my people understand. But I also know this, when they come across my page, they know it's different. When they read my words and watch me on video, they know it's different.
I think the level of depth and detail you pay to like people's business, like mine, for example, is like invaluable. So I think it's hard to just get that if somebody just coaching strategy. So I just want to say that's one of the things like I respect and admire most about you.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, no problem. So you left us with a lot of gems and like business takeaways. What would you say you would like listeners to get from this episode? One or two things.
Why are you gonna try to box me in like that and say one
All
or
right,
two things?
everything. All right, 5.
No, I would say the biggest thing is actually figure out what you want. Because if you don't figure that out, what you want, it's gonna be real hard to make a move. And don't get paralyzed by not knowing. The way you actually know is you make a move. And then it gets clear what it is. So figure out what you want. And when you believe you got it, go take an action in that direction. You're going to instantly be revealed if that's for you or not. And this is where that trust piece comes in. So this is my number 2. You got to listen. If you feel you've got what you want and you know what you want, you take that action. And you take that one action and there's something in you that feels unsettled. You're like, nah, this doesn't really feel like it. You got to decide, is it because you're being stretched and you're being asked to develop a new skill or level up, and this just feels hard and it's uncomfortable? Or is this a path that's not for you? And that's the difference between developing your own intuition, your own guidance. And so that would be my 2 things: is figure out what you want, take the action, and then reassess. Like, we don't just take a look at someone's knee and do a manual technique and be like, all right, go. It's like, well, squat. Where does it hurt? We do a manual thing, and then you ask them to squat again. So it's like a test, retest, right? Test, do the thing. So I treat business the same way. It's like, figure out what we want, go take a move, get as close to the fire as we can so we can make a decision on if we need to jump or not. But always identify if what you're feeling is just sheer discomfort, because that's going to come. You're not going to get out of here without calluses. You're not going to get out of here without feeling like you under some pressure. But we can't mistake that pressure as something bad. You are being built. And that is the part of developing the trust. You got to learn that.
Love that. Siobhan, just want to say thank you for coming on the pod. If people have questions or want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
You can find me on the gram at Dr. Siobhan France, Siobhan, last name France like the country. You can also find me on Facebook at Siobhan France. And if you go to drsiobhanfrance.com/roadmap, you're going to get a masterclass that's actually going to take you through exactly what you need to do to leave your 9-to-5.
Bless. We'll put those in the show notes. I just want to say thank you again for coming on the show, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you so much.